Hello, I'm Lanre Lasisi, and I would like to welcome you to the program Rethinking Nigeria, a Perspective. This program will focus on the national conference which is currently taking place in the nation's capital, Abuja. We'll bring you a weekly review of the conference and the major talking points. As you know, the conference is aimed at examining and resolving issues that have hindered the country from becoming a truly united nation. As the delegates go about their task, this program will help you stay informed of their deliberations and decisions. We will also have an added perspective from a guest who also happens to be a delegate. But that is up ahead. Let's start with a short report that looks at the developments that took place within the week. The very first issue that was addressed this week during the national conference was the voting modality to be adopted for the conference. Delegates were informed of the resolution proposed by the consultative committee that was put together on the issue.
In the case of failure to reach consensus, the matter shall be decided by majority vote of 70% of delegates present and voting.
The matter was immediately adopted and put to a vote.
All those in favor of the motion moved say aye. Aye. All those against say nay. Nay. The ayes have it.
A slight debate came up when a motion was moved to have delegates rescind an earlier decision to have delegates in committees pick their chairman and deputy chairman. The deputy chairman had to explain the thinking behind the motion.
You may then end up in a situation where 10 committees acting independently will appoint chairmen from the same zone, and then the problem will end up here.
Delegates had different views on the resolution reached on the voting modality for the conference.
That 50 wise men and women appointed by the chairman to look into the two-third or three-third or even consensus, they saved this conference, honestly.
I have mixed feelings, but I think the best approach would have been to split what you require 70% for and what you require simple majority for. That's the law of meetings anywhere in the world. It is not, you don't have one voting criteria for all issues.
In the Nigerian usual way, we've dodged the issue, we've given an appearance of resolution. I know that the very issue will still come back to it, but we've merely postponed the evil day.
A large part of the week was spent discussing the president's inaugural speech. Delegates had 3 minutes each and spoke in alphabetic order. They focused on different aspects of the speech.
We all want to see a positively transformed Nigeria, and therefore urge all of us to work individually and collectively so as to set the right agenda for Nigeria of our dream. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in.
I think one of our biggest problems is that we need to revert power to the people. As it is today, with the governance structure that we have in Nigeria, the power is not with the people.
That the debate today really is not about Christianity and Islam. These are elitist debates that are designed to divert our attention away from Nigeria, from the 10% of Nigerians that speak the same language when they go into the boardroom, or when they board their aircraft, or when they have weekend parties.
Some of the delegates spoke to us on the discussion.
But I feel that we should have asked those who wish to comment instead of moving from one person to the other. But of course the chairman did throw it to the floor, and members decided that each of them wants to speak.
It has given the opportunity to everybody at least to say that I was at a conference at a particular time and I spoke.
It's important that the speech is discussed because it's giving us the room to bring out those silent points and those issues that people are worried about, and people are using it as an opportunity to ventilate, which is also good.
The work plan for the conference and the proposed committee structure was also adopted. The session adjourned on this note, and the discussion on the president's speech is expected to continue when the session resumes. It is also expected that members of the different committees will be decided and announced to delegates this week. It's now time to meet our guest. He's the president and founder of ANAP Foundation, which is a non-profit organization committed to promoting good governance. He also happens to be a delegate at the national conference. He's Atedo Peterside. In this interview, he speaks on the conference with our reporter, Benga Ashiru.
Mr. Peterside, you're welcome to Rethinking Nigeria.
Thank you.
So now we'll be going into the heart of the story after a lot of dramatic turns that have raised anxieties about what may likely come out of the conference in the days ahead. And now let's quickly look at the issue of a proposal of a bill in which seeks powers of the president to initiate a new constitution and amendment of the Section 9 of the 1999 Constitution. Lots of oppositions are saying that there is a backdoor attempt to give a legal backing to the outcome of the national conference.
You know, honestly, I believe this is one more sort of storm in a teacup. I don't think it really matters who initiates anything. In any case, how can it be that any lowly member of the House of Rep can initiate something, and then the symbolic head of the nation or of the largest political party, based on the last elections, cannot even initiate anything? So is he meant to go and to pass his ideas through his local, House of Rep member or what? I think it makes common sense that the symbol of authority in Nigeria should be able to initiate. Initiation does not mean approval. Initiation means that you say, look, these are my ideas. And if you don't respect the ideas of a president, then whose ideas will you respect? So to me, it's really a non-issue.
Now, but isn't this surreptitious and ill-timed as suggested by those opposing these bills?
It is a myth that any national conference, its acceptance depends on law, depends on political parties or anything. A national conference is a contest of ideas. A national conference succeeds or gets accepted only based on the quality of ideas it brings out, which the generality of Nigerians accept. If you bring out terrible ideas, the ideas from a national conference, it doesn't matter how many laws are backing you, Nigerians will reject it. Conversely, even if you do not have any legal backing or any such thing, and you bring out wonderful, first-class, powerful ideas, Nigerians will buy into those ideas. And when Nigerians buy into something, they will force the powers that be to go along with it. I'll give you one example. Even the conference that was convened by Abacha, which was the lowest point in our history in terms of democracy and human rights and so on, do you know that even that conference produced a powerful idea that we all still today, resort to? The whole idea of 6 geopolitical zones, go and check the records, was something that was first mooted, at least publicly, and first brought into in a conference convened by Abacha. Abacha is dead and gone. No law was enacted to enforce the 6 geopolitical zones. But I'm sure today you accept which zone you're from. I accept which zone I'm from. That is the power of ideas.
You'll recall that there's been an effort already which was led by Barrister Olisa Agbakuba, and which recommended that INEC should lead this process and it should be subjected to a referendum. So a lot of people are confused that why is this sudden bill coming up at this point in time when the national conference is up?
You know, Nigeria being a country of 170 million people, there are various people with various ideas. The same fellow you mentioned, Olisa, is a member of the confab. He's there like everybody else, trying to sell his ideas. If he has powerful ideas, he should come to the floor of the confab and sell them. And he will probably succeed. I don't think Olisa or anybody was saying that whatever idea I espoused before is binding on anybody else. Some delegates came to the confab and they said, oh, their group has met, and in their back pockets they have some prepared position. And I wish them luck. I said, you know what? When you finish with that thing, when you finish hiding things in your pocket, one day you bring them out and argue them on the floor. I can give you examples of 3 things that have already passed through the confab that nobody had any idea they would pass the way they passed. The first one, if you recollect, in our first meeting, somebody came with an idea and I said, oh, he thought that the arrangements for how the delegates should sit should be based on your origin, set of origin. The next two speakers, said no, they disagreed. They wanted something scientific, arrange all the delegates from A to Z, and that we didn't come here to sit with our next door neighbors only and those from our tribe. The whole house endorsed it, and it was accepted. So number one, those who thought they came to sit my tribe versus yours, they were knocked down. The next group was on prayer. Christians, Muslims, as you know, there are Muslim leaders, Christian leaders. They were all in the hall. Somebody raised the issue of the chairman when he was speaking, first gave a Muslim prayer of some sort. I think the chairman slightly misread that, because what he then proposed at the end was that, okay, I was thinking that since I'm being accused of Muslim bias, can I propose that we have two prayers, a Christian prayer and a Muslim prayer? And we, again, like with one voice almost, we all shouted no. Keep your Muslim prayer, keep your Christian prayer. We are here on a national assignment. All we want is a national prayer displayed on the screen, second verse of the national item. The whole house erupted and bought into the idea. The Muslim leaders were there, so were the Christian leaders. They were too clever and intelligent to stand in the way of the will of the people. That was the second idea. The third idea, a powerful one, came from women. A lady observed that the whole document, draft document for the rules, everywhere they said he or him or and so on to refer to delegates. She said about the women, why can't we change the word he everywhere to he or she and him to him or her? Some delegate, a man, got up to resist that, saying that the definition said that wherever they say he, it includes she. So the woman replied and said, okay, write she everywhere, and then define the she to also cover the men. Of course, we both knew that that was like, I'm playing around with a needless issue. And immediately we all resolved. It takes nothing from any of us, man or woman, to everywhere write he or she. So the document that was produced now says him or her, he or she, everybody's happy. So those are three ideas, one to do with religion, one to do with ethnic origin, and one to do with gender. I'm ready to show you how nobody left his house on March 17th and thought that when I get there, I will present this idea. They were spontaneous, all the delegates bought into them, and they were carried. That is how a national conference makes progress.
Now, we'll be moving on to the dramatic turn that led to the emergence of what people have dubbed the 50 wise men. What's your thoughts on this?
In reality, what happened was that there was controversy on the floor of the House over the issue of how to define consensus. The draft document we were given, when we arrived, we were given a draft document which we were debating. It contained a provision that said that where we were unable to achieve consensus, a vote of 3/4 should suffice. We were debating the draft. Some people got up and said, and debate means you're allowed to modify it, and we were allowed to make our own rules. So some delegates got up and said, in their opinion, that figure 3/4 should be changed to 2/3. Of course, some delegates wanted 3/4, some wanted 2/3. So it got a bit heated, the argument. And I think what also happened was that through a variety of means and the rules not being clear enough for the chairman to enforce discipline, that was like one of our rowdiest sessions. So one or two of us got up and proposed that, listen, you cannot resolve a matter like this where tempers are already getting high, people are shouting, you can't resolve it and you've lost control. Classic standard approach to handling large groups meetings is that if you know you've lost control, you adjourn. In any case, by the very nature, some contentious issues are better resolved in a smaller group, away from TV cameras, because some people who were talking on that day in the big hall, I think there was an extent to which they were sort of posturing. They knew they were on live TV. They were saying things not so much based on what they believed was right, but what they wanted their audience back home to hear them saying and so on. So we advocated that this matter be taken out of the main hall with tempers already high, taken to a smaller gathering of people, let's call them friends of the chairman or whoever, to sit down, brainstorm, and see whether they could propose something that they would bring back to the main house. That was how the so-called 50 wise men were chosen. And in our deliberations, We were very civil. We sat down like ladies and gentlemen. No tempers flaring. There was lots. We brainstormed together, and all the matters were resolved. We settled on 70% as a definition of consensus. Everybody was happy. We also agreed in that forum that it probably made more sense to have the chairman and his team of vice chairman, secretary, and co select committee chairman. So we came back to report to the main house, told them the reasons why we resolved on 70%, the reasons why we thought committee chairman should be chosen by the chairman and the vice chairman and that group. And these things were accepted by the whole house, largely.
Isn't this given credence to the earlier suspicion that some of these agendas have been earlier scripted?
That is why some of us argued, and from the beginning it was made clear that the 50 wise men was a one-off thing. Some of us felt that it should only address that one-off issue which it addressed and be disbanded thereafter. And that was done. It was disbanded immediately after. The reason is very simple. If you start having some super delegates or 50 wise men and so on, arguments arise as to how the group of 50 was composed. The arguments arise again about the group of 50 being lopsided. Somebody argued that you observed that of the 50 wise men, you had 5 from Kano. Another person observed that there was nobody from Lagos State. All kinds of things would surface. So if you had any such standing group, arguments as to how you are going to compose it would be intense. One more reason why I was among those who argued very much in favor of disbanding the group of 50 wise men. You see, once you create something like a business committee or a crisis group or any such thing, it soon becomes a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. If people know that there's a crisis committee that is waiting and standing, they will generate crisis periodically and say, let us refer it to the committee on crisis. So the next thing you know, some members will get bogged down trying to rule on all manners of crisis. So my preference was that let us arrive at a definition of consensus, 70% that we all agree with. And then the next time there's any contentious issue, let us debate it and put it before the floor. And if you get 70% of delegates backing it, then bingo, you're in business.
Now let's examine the mandates and the terms of reference of the National Conference. Do you think the National Conference has enough capacity to deliver on its terms and expectations?
All those things were almost expected. Look, why was there a clamor for a national conference in the first instance? All the credible opinion polls I've seen indicated that 88% of Nigerians minimum were in favor of a conference. People wanted the conference because they wanted the burning issues to be discussed. And I've said it before that at the end of the day, any society, any grouping, any nation, if you have serious burning issues, there are only 3 things you can do about them. 1 is to get together and talk about the issues and the problems. 2 is to fight yourselves. Or 3, do nothing. Given that scenario, any day I'll sooner talk. Now, when you get together to talk, it is natural to expect that if people came because there were burning issues, there will be anger, there will be frustration. The conference is also an outlet for that anger, for that frustration. So you expected that at the beginning, people would be trying to get things off their chest. In fact, from what I saw, the biggest cause of frustration in the first few days of the conference was the fact that on every issue, there were so many hands that were raised that many people felt that they never got the chance to voice their own issues. And that's why when it came to debating the president's speech, we decided that every single delegate that wishes to speak will speak for 3 minutes, turn by turn. At that point, there was less tension. People relaxed. They knew that their own turn will come. They would have 3 minutes of prime time to mention the issues on their chest and so on. And we're going through that process. And now, all of a sudden, there's peace.
Now, some delegates are still not satisfied with the change in the rules to have the conference chairman appoint the chairman and deputy chairman of the committees into the proceedings of the national conference. Do you see this posing a problem in the days ahead?
I don't think so. I think it is the converse that would have posed the bigger problem. You see, if you had committees, let's say 20 committees that's proposed initially, and you asked all of them to go and vote for chairman, to vote and decide in each committee who the chairman will be. Because the 20 committees are meeting simultaneously, there was a possibility that each of the 20 committees, voting based on the membership of the committee, could have chosen, let me take the most extreme case. Each committee could have come out via an election process and voted for a chairman that was from the South, a Christian, and male. So the following day you announced to Nigerians that here are the 20 committee chairmen, and they are all from the South, they are all Christians, and they are all male. Then you're going to have the Muslims screaming, injustice. You will have the women screaming injustice. You will have the North screaming injustice. Why go down a road that you know fully well that it can lead to a solution that is unacceptable? So instead, some of us argued, and I would say convincingly, that don't go down a road that you cannot control its outcome. Why don't you instead entrust the maturity, wisdom, and integrity of the chairman, supported by the vice chairman and the secretary and others? Let them sit down, pick chairpersons based on competence, and also to achieve diversity and so on. I prefer to go down that road because you know in advance that you have a very responsible chairman. Whatever he does, he knows he's doing it and will announce the result to the whole nation. So that outcome I can live with. The other outcome I think was fraught with danger. So you can sum it up by saying it's about risk management.
Just to lay a firm grip on your perspective now, you said there was a point the chairman lost control of the House and now he's gaining a mastery on how to manage a rowdy session. Looking at the magnitude of such a national conference, is it meant to be a learning curve?
No, it hasn't. Let me explain again. If there was pent-up anger, frustration in the land, you bring people together for a talk shop, there was always the potential that in the first few days, things may get a little bit out of control. And also in life, practice makes perfect. I'm sure even the chairman has improved his mastery of how to manage a large crowd of people who are highly charged and so on, because you improve by doing. I think therefore that some of the issues that we faced initially were expected, but let me end on a positive note. Instead of being in any way disturbed or worried, I am impressed and happy at the fact that if you notice, every issue that has come up has been debated. People have subjected to the will or power of superior arguments. We have achieved consensus and we have moved forward to face new issues.
Do you envisage the possibility of an extension of the deadline of this conference proceedings?
We spent lots of time up front agreeing upon the rules because those are the rules that will guide us in our subsequent deliberations and make those deliberations move very smoothly. So that was time well invested. But I think a handful of us, many of us, are busy people. We committed 3 months of our lives to sit down in a confab in Abuja. I'm not sure that even some of us want to spend the next 6 months in a confab in Abuja because I don't know what issues there are that cannot be resolved in 3 months.
How confident are you, how optimistic are you that this national conference, this national talking shop is likely to produce, if not an entirely perfect document, at least an effective document that could make a difference in the aspirations of Nigerians?
To me, this conference should be a hotbed for ideas. I honestly believe that ideas will come out that will move this nation forward. How quickly the ideas take shape, I don't know. I bet you if you go and speak to the people who first proposed the concept of 6 geopolitical zones in the Abacha conference, some of them will be surprised that almost 20 years later, that idea is still gaining traction.
Now, just before we wind down this interview, on a lighter note, since you're talking about ideas now, some have advocated that why can't we just pick up the United States Constitution and adapt it into our own Constitution, that it's been seen as a fantastic working document?
I wish life were that simple. It's difficult. People say you should not. It's difficult to transplant or import ideas 100%. I think there was a reason why Americans sat down and decided how to govern their own lives. I don't think you can run away from having Nigerians do the same. Part of the problem is that in the past, there has been too much tampering or too much avenue for people who were not phenomenally learned to think that they could forcibly impose and inject some of their own personal ideas. So they spoiled, the line of reasoning of some of the past documents and so on. Take an example. Abacha never formally got up and accepted the 6 geopolitical zones. If he did, he would have passed a decree the following day. But he is dead now. The idea is alive.
Yeah, at this point, I really must appreciate your no holds barred attempt to give light into the proceedings of the national conference, and I really must say a big thank you for making our time in spite of your very busy schedule to be part of this edition of Rethinking Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Well, that is it for the program this week on Rethinking Nigeria. We will be here with you next week, updating you on all that the delegates at the National Conference have achieved as we march towards a new Nigeria. Till then, I'm Lanre Lasese. Bye.